Welcome back again to another video on the channel. It's your Filmmaker, and in today's video I'll be telling you my experience with Lumix systems 6 months now and why I went all in. I have the Lumix S1R Mark II and the Lumix S1 II, and I'm currently recording this on the S5 IIX. Now I've been using these cameras for 6 months now, and before I had these cameras I've shot in the Canon, I've shot in the Sony. In fact, I had shot in the Sony A7 for over a year before I thought about selling that, and even before I got the Sony I shot some Blackmagic cameras, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, and the Blackmagic Pixel 6K, which I currently own up until this day. I've sold the Pocket 4K, I've sold the Pocket 6K Pro, and I also sold the Sony A7 IV. So why did I sell all these cameras and keep the Lumix system, or go for the Lumix S1R Mark II and Lumix S1 II and even the S5 IIX? Well, if you're a videographer, you shoot weddings, you shoot events, you do sports, I'll tell you guys why you should think about going with the Lumix L-mount system. Now, the number one reason why I went all in on the Lumix systems was the colors coming straight out on this camera. Videographers S1Rii with extra editing. Without even spending much time, we get my skin tones looking excellent. It feels like there was life in my skin tones. It feels like there was blood flowing in the skin tones. I didn't have to spend so much time trying to finesse the skin tone to look right, which is something of a problem I had coming from my Sony A7 IV colors. I know how to color grade to get my colors looking right. Look at my past videos. Look at this video coming from the S5 IIX. The colors are looking great. Well, they're looking great to me, something I didn't experience on my A7 IV. Sometimes I'll spend more times and get it right, but I'm telling you, in this age where content is coming out every 2 seconds, every second, you don't want to spend so much time grading skin tones to look right. And this is something I didn't have a problem with the Lumix system. My wife and I, we run a podcast here in the studio where we mix and use 3 different cameras, and it was easy for me to get the Lumix with the Blackmagic cameras looking great. But when I had the Sony A7 IV in the mix, it was a pain. I'm not saying Sony colors are not right, you can get it right, but I had to spend so much time editing the podcast, editing my YouTube videos, and editing other content, just trying to get the yellow or the orange or the red colors looking right. It just used to be a pain for me. And I think the dynamic range, when it comes to image quality, the dynamic range coming out from the S1R II, you get 13 plus stops of dynamic range, and when you unlock dynamic range boost, you get 14 plus stops. On the S1 II, you get 14 plus stops. When you unlock dynamic range boost, you get 15 plus stops of dynamic range, which is huge for videographers. The next thing for me, which is also a big deal, is getting RAW out of this camera. I know you can do ProRes RAW internally. There's also the ability to do B-RAW externally. But for someone who's run or been using the Blackmagic systems, I'm happy that if I want B-RAW, I can get B-RAW out of this camera via HDMI. The only thing is I wish that I could do B-RAW, or we could do B-RAW internally. Hopefully in the future, we have a newer Lumix system that you can do B-RAW internally without using the Blackmagic Video Assist. I'm satisfied that I have this via HDMI, because these cameras, one thing Lumix does best is pack a ton of things into the cameras. So I'd love to see a Lumix camera that has great autofocus with the IBIS, which we'll talk about soon, with B-RAW internally. That would be a game changer. The next thing is autofocus. Now I'm going to be honest here. Yes, the autofocus on the Lumix S1 II and the S1R II is greatly improved compared to, say, the S5 IIX, which was a game changer at its time. Yes, face auto detect autofocus is sweet on these cameras. I'm shooting 5.9, or which is approximately 6K on the S5 IIX, and the thing is, if you understand how to set or get your autofocus settings right, you will get great autofocus coming out from these cameras, which is what I'm doing with the S5 IIX. With the S1 II, I've had absolutely no issues filming at the highest resolution, at the highest codec, getting autofocus out of this camera. And the S1R II, same thing. I would have to tune my autofocus right to get the best autofocus, and it has been reliable. I left these cameras on sticks, gone around set and come back, and the autofocus is still reliable. I can put my hand in front of me and the autofocus goes to my hand, and I can put it out and it comes back to me. So the autofocus on these cameras are very, very reliable and would be improved in the future. I could rate them at 98% accurate, and just know your autofocus settings, set it right, and you would not be worried about autofocus. Now the next thing is IBIS, stabilization and handheld work. Trust me, the image stabilization coming up from these cameras are super. The industry knows that Lumix mirrorless cameras have the best working stabilization for videographers. There are times I'll shot on monopods, and sometimes I'll have the monopod like a steady cam and get nice smooth image. Sometimes I'll shoot on a telephoto lens without electronic stabilization enabled, and I'll get smooth stabilization. So you can't go wrong with Lumix systems handheld, whether you're shooting sports, whether you're shooting fast moving images or fast moving subjects. As far as your settings are right, if you want that extra battery stabilization, you can go even extreme. Just understand what you're going for. I had situations where the person I'm shooting would say, no, go handheld. I like the handheld coming off from your camera. You don't need to rig up a gimbal, which, yes, it slows me down and I get nice, smooth stabilization. So the Lumix cameras, these systems have been great when it comes to IBIS, stabilization and handheld work, which has been easy for me. I'll just have the EVF close to my eye, have the camera close to my eye, and I'm shooting even with telephoto lenses, and I have very, very smooth stabilization. I think Lumix has nailed it when it comes to the body design of the S1R or all their cameras. The grip is solid. You don't need an extra cage, although I have the small rig Mamba cage on the S1R II here, but it just feels so right. It feels so right. I can hardly tell there's a cage on it because of how light the cage is, but I can use this without the cage, but I like the cage because I rig out stuff on my cameras. So the design, the button placement, I have my white balance here, I have my ISO, which I can quickly change while filming. Click on ISO and I can just quickly adjust it using the wheel at the back. I can adjust my shutter using the wheel, or my shutter angle using the wheel at the back. I can change so many things. I can quickly adjust my autofocus box setting. I can change my autofocus settings quickly just with my thumb, and I can go quickly access quick menu systems using my thumb. It looks premium, it feels well made. There's so much talk about this camera, but this is what I've found in terms of the body design and button arrangement, and even the tally light. The tally light will tell you if you're recording, if you're not recording, if you have the activated, deactivated, which is a great thing to have on the S1 II, the S1R II, and even the S1 II, which I don't have. I've been thinking of upgrading my S5 2X to the S1 II. Now, the next thing is false colors. If you're serious about getting your exposure nailed in, you know how important false colors are. And that is what I've enjoyed filming with the S1 II and the S1R II. Unfortunately, the S5 2X doesn't have false colors, but people have got a way around by installing a false color lot. For me, I can easily just press this button, which I mapped it to. That's this button here. If I turn on my camera, so I have it turned on now. If I press this button, it's mapped to a false color, and I've activated false color. If I press it again, it goes off. If I want to bring on my waveforms, if I press there, I map that to waveforms. You can see it up there. And if I want to turn it off, I can just press again and it's turned off. Another thing is the frame markers. Yeah, there's a big talk about open gate. It's not necessary, blah, blah, blah. If you want open gate, if you want to widen out your frame, just walk 2 steps back or zoom out, use a wider angle lens. That's just rubbish. That's waste of time. Imagine filming and there's no space behind you. There's a wall. How would you walk back to get up a wider frame for 9x16? Trust me, all you have to do is just, press up here and film this in open gate. I can activate my frame markers for 9x16. If I don't want that, if I don't need that, I can press it to deactivate that. So that's how I've set my things. If you want my settings, I'll put the links in the description so you can easily click and download so you can install it on your Lumix cameras. Now the next thing is overheating, reliability and thermal confidence. Yes, at the launch of the S1R II, most especially, a lot of people didn't know about the issues with overheating. And I experienced a lot of overheating with the Lumix S1R II, which I had 6 months ago before I added the S1 II to the fleet. Even in photography mode with the camera in standby mode. There was a time I'll have the camera this way in standby mode, in photography mode, and the camera will just overheat. But I haven't had any issues since Lumix latest firmware updates for the S1R II and the S1 II. Trust me, I've left these cameras on sticks recording, even with the non-approved CF Express Type B cards, which I'm not advising you to use, but even with those cards, I've had no overheating issues whatsoever. And I've used it for long takes, for long A-roll takes like this for YouTube, even in 8.1K on the S1R II and in 6K open gate, and I've had absolutely no overheating. I'm not saying there's no overheating there for even extended, maybe 3-4 hours, long time in the highest settings. For me, I had no overheating issues for the way I work and for the ways I use these cameras. For me, I think these cameras are very now reliable. Okay, I've been saying a lot of nice things about this Lumix camera. There's some things which I'd like to see improved in maybe firmware updates or in better versions of this camera. And number one would be the mobile app. I'd love to see multicam come to the mobile apps, the Lumix Lab or the Lumix Flow. I'd love to see a more stable app or stable connection between the iPad and the S5 I use it on my phone without any issues, but on the iPad version, once in a while, it would crash. So I like to see an app that doesn't crash. The next thing will be OLPF. Hopefully in the near future, we get a Lumix camera with an OLPF filter. But obviously, there are other ways of getting this in by using the color revision. I don't have that filter. Hopefully, I can buy that and put into my camera. So yeah, next one will be B-roll internally. I've mentioned it earlier on, but I'd love to see a Lumix camera with internal B-roll recording. Another thing I'd love to see is maybe a cinema-style body Lumix camera. I hope that's possible, but it'd be great to have like a pixie style or box body Lumix camera that has internal ND and all that kind of thing, and hopefully an improved subject tracking where you can just tap on a subject in the frame and it tracks that. Although they have good tracking, I'd love to see the kind of one you have in the Sony cameras where you just click on something and it keeps it tracked. And the next thing would be 32-bit internal via the 3.5mm jack. I'd love to see that also in a Lumix camera. I'd love to see a reduction or a zero HDMI lag if that's possible. Not a big issue for me, because for me HDMI is just for checking your framing, make sure things are happening right. But obviously you can improve that if you turn off audio, which everyone knows by now, I think. But I'd love to see that issue completely removed. So should you switch to or should you buy a Lumix system? If you're thinking about that, this is coming from someone who has used Canon systems, who have used Blackmagic systems, who have used Sony system because of its great autofocus, but have switched to Lumix L-mount systems. You have third-party brands or manufacturers who have joined the L-mount alliance like S1Rii, TT Artisans, 7 Artisans, Sigma, and their lenses are affordable, they are fast, they are very great. I use all these different brands and lenses, and like I'm shooting with the S1Rii Aura 35 f1.4, they have the 85, TT Artisans have the 75 f2, they have the 40 f2. They have been great and they're affordable to buy. So think about it. You can grade your images coming up from these cameras easier than what you get from the Sony. That's from my own personal experience. The handling is great. Lumix also listens to its users. They see how the users are using their cameras. They don't give you what they think you need, they give you what you want. I'll put it that way. They listen and they adapt. They listen and they upgrade. They listen and they give you an answer. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me, you can shoot me a message and I'll try to answer. I'll leave a link to download my settings for my Lumix S1R II and my Lumix S1 II in case you're interested, if you want to use the camera the way I use my camera. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss videos from me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below and I'll see you in the next one. It's a Filmmaker. God bless and peace.